Firewalls are security devices that we can use to filter the traffic that we allow into our networks and out of our networks, as well as to our end devices as well. So firewalls are really important from a security perspective, and we're going to look in this lesson at some basic concepts associated with how firewalls work. So let's say we have multiple IP networks or subnets, and we have multi-tier applications running across those subnets. So in this example, we've got the web tier on the front end, which is receiving traffic from our internet-based clients. We then have an application server processing some data like maybe orders on a website, and then placing some information into a database such as the order information. Now, our connections are coming from the internet. So how can we control what we're allowing in to make sure that we best secure our web server? Well, this is where we can implement a firewall. A firewall uses firewall rules to determine what traffic is allowed. So the important thing to understand is we want certain traffic to reach our web server. We want traffic on port 80 and port 443 because this is the HTTP and HTTPS protocols. So this is a website, it runs on those two ports, and it needs to be able to receive traffic. So we have rules that allow those two ports and from any source. Now, wherever we can, we try to filter the sources to say, well, we only want certain computers or certain networks to talk to our server. So we can better use controls to limit who's able to talk on what protocols. In this case, because this is a website running on the internet, we want everybody to be able to connect to our website. So the source is any. So this will allow the traffic that we need to get to our web server. There's then a rule at the bottom here which says deny, and it says any, destination internal, and the source any. That essentially means it's going to deny everything else, which is what we want because every server will have various ports open. And lots of times malicious attackers can use vulnerabilities in software to exploit those servers and potentially cause all sorts of damage. So we want to always limit the ports that are open, or the ports that the end users are able to connect to try and stop any kind of malicious attacks. So that's where a firewall rule will filter out which traffic we allow to reach our server. Now, we don't just place firewalls at the perimeter. We can also place them internally. So we could say that any traffic leaving our web server and going to our application server is also subject to some rules. So for example, we might have a rule that says that we know what port the application is running on. So let's allow traffic only from this particular web server and only to that specific port that the application server is talking on. So that's going to limit those communications from the front network here to our internal network here. So if an attacker does exploit one of these servers, they can't then easily jump from here into the other ranges that we have into our internal networks. Another place we could place a firewall is on that internal network. So we could now say, let's filter again and make sure that the traffic is only coming from a specific server and only going to a specific destination. So another level of control. We can also place firewalls at our devices themselves. So every individual server can have its own firewall. So it's filtering traffic here. Often we will implement firewalls at multiple different levels, and this is really defense in depth. So it means that we've got those levels of control at different layers in our network, so that even if one layer gets compromised, it's hard to then get from there to somewhere else and be able to further exploit any weaknesses internally. So those are the basics about how firewalls work, and we'll be looking at a couple of services including security groups and network ACLs, which are AWS firewalls that we can implement to protect our resources on AWS.